Hello, everyone. Good morning. I know it's been a long, long time. I love all the conversation and the hugs and the why do we do that, right? I'm so guilty of doing that when I see my girlfriends, right? That high-pitched squeal. Maybe that's just me. Welcome to the Issue Spotlight. We are so excited you're here. We are thrilled to be back and have a wonderful program here for you today to get us started out before we have our luncheon upstairs. My name is Julie Keller. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Fund, and I really just want to welcome you all here today. And I am going to turn it over to Hallie Tenpas, who's going to be our moderator for our panel today. She's a pro at this, literally. And we have some wonderful women here who's going to tell about their journey in breaking barriers in fields that there's not a lot of women represented in. I don't like to say non-traditional because no field should be non-traditional. So where women are underrepresented, then we are gonna have a great discussion today. So thank you all for coming here. I'm gonna turn it over to Hallie and then look forward to seeing you all upstairs for the luncheon. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And it's so nice to see everybody in person. I feel like that's a phrase we've been saying a lot lately, but it really is nice to see everyone. Like Julie said, I'm Hallie Tenpas. I host Focus Fox Valley on WHBY radio here in town, weekdays from 11 to 1, so I'm not on the air today because I'm here with all of you, but I'm so thrilled. And I see and recognize many faces here who have sometimes been guests on my show, so it's good to see all of you. And I actually, in preparing for this panel, was taking a little reflection, and at WHBY and actually at Woodward Radio Group, I am the only female host on the air currently. So a little perspective from my industry, we need more ladies in radio. So if you ever want to be a guest on my show, please come reach out. I wish I could have recorded the Zoom conversation I had with these amazing women earlier in preparation, and you are all in for such a treat. The wisdom and experience that these ladies are bringing to the table today is incredible, and I cannot wait to get started. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves because who knows you better than yourself? So please, Maggie, we'll have you start by sharing who you are, what you do, and your current role.
Okay. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. I didn't know if I needed to move the microphone. Good morning. My name is Maggie Handler. I am a Director of Materials at...
I think...
Okay, yep. Sounds good. Okay. Hopefully that'll work. My name is Maggie Handler. I'm a Director of Materials at Pierce Manufacturing, where I have been for about 17 years. I started at Pierce as summer help, and upon graduation from college, I just never left. The majority of my tenure has been spent in materials, but I've also held roles in purchasing and manufacturing operations, as well as a short time in aftermarket. I'm really excited to be participating in this event today as a lifelong resident of the Fox Valley. Initiatives like this mean a lot to me. My husband and I just celebrated 8 years of marriage last week, and we have 3 little kids, 6, 4, and 2. So this is the kind of stuff that I am appreciative to be involved with.
Welcome, Maggie.
Hi, I'm Heather Stoffel. I'm with the Bolt Company. I am Senior Director of Healthcare, Operations Manager. I'm out of their WRV office, which is Wisconsin River Valley out of Stevens Point. I am Project Executive on construction projects. Majority of my career has been in healthcare and doing healthcare projects. I found myself in construction because my dad was a heavy concrete superintendent, so I grew up around it all the time, never realizing a gender issue, right? It's just what you did. He brought plans home, laid them on the table. I looked at them. I worked summers, never thought of an issue with it. So my mom wanted me to be a pharmacist, and I ended up, and my dad wanted me to be an engineer. So I ended up in construction. I love it. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and it's something I really enjoy doing. I always say I'm not a builder, right? I don't put hammer to nail, but I do bring in all the stuff that somebody needs to construct it, and in the end product, I feel like I've had my hands in it. Over the years, we would go on family vacations, and my dad would want to stop and see the sewer treatment plant and so, right? And I found myself, my daughter goes to Marquette, and we drive downtown, and it was my first project was downtown Milwaukee, and she's like, "Don't say it. I know that was your first project. You said, every time we come to Milwaukee. So yes, I know that's the Bringle Technology Center, and that was your first project. So, but thank you for allowing me to be part of this today.
I'm Priscilla Mello. I work at Anchor as a Senior Research and Development Director. I've been to the company for 23 years, so I started my career down in Brazil, and I relocated to the US 4 years ago with my family. My background, I'm chemical engineering, and I just finished my executive MBA at UW Oshkosh. I'm really proud to be here with all of you. So I'm completely new at the community, 4 years, but my family and I felt that everybody received us really well. So I'm glad to be here. And so.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Jansen. I'm in technology, so I was just thinking about it recently, 30 years in corporate America. Of course, I went to college for technology as well. So I worked most of my career at Kimberly-Clark, was in various positions there, VP of IT strategy, communications, architecture, pretty much you name it in technology, I've done it. I left Kimberly-Clark and moved to Thrivent and was the Chief Information Officer at Thrivent, which was a great experience, and then achieved, which sounds like a funny thing to say in technology, but I achieved my lifetime goal of retiring at 55. So I've been retired for some months, almost a year. I have been married forever, I think. I don't know, some days it feels that way, 30 years, and I have 3 sons. So I always joke, I'm just a feminist, believe in, and I was given 3 sons to raise as feminists. So a funny fact, the very first computer class I ever took was in high school, which back then, it was an Apple IIe, for those of you who don't even know probably at all what that is. And it was taught by Sister Catherine. So I had my first computer class taught to me by a nun.
Love it. Well, welcome, ladies, and let's welcome them once again. So we kind of heard a little bit, I think, here of what inspired them to get into their field. But I would love to expand on that. And I'm wondering if there was a moment in your life where you went, spark, light bulb, aha, this is an industry that I need to have my feet in. So who would ever like to take that one? Go ahead.
I can take, I had a professor, actually a teacher in high school, and I was going to do hotel motel management. That's what I wanted to do. That's what interested me. And he pulled me aside, he was my physics professor, and he said, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?" He's like, kind of math, science is your thing and your jam. Do you really want to do that? And I'm like, well, I didn't know that, why? Okay, sure. So I started looking at it. If he probably maybe wouldn't have mentioned it, I might have been in a completely different career path.
I'll answer that too, because mine isn't super inspirational, and I don't know if everybody gets a spark, but I grew up really practical. I grew up with you better make money to take care of yourself, don't rely on someone else for your own financial security. This was drilled into me from the time that I was young, so that you have options in your life. So in college, I knew I was going to go into business. That was really what I did want to do. Because I felt that it was just so broad, that you could be almost anything in business. You could be an entrepreneur, so I went into human resources also, but I remember thinking, wow, technology seems like where it's at. So it's a super practical, I'm just going to also get a technology degree because it seems like most of the jobs during this recession were in technology. So I thought, practically speaking, if I get a job in technology, work a couple years, then maybe, and here we are 35 years later. So it really was a practical choice at the time for job security and getting insurance. And so I don't know if that's a spark, but it really did work out.
Technology seems to be doing pretty good
Yeah.
in 2022.
Just saying.
Just a little bit. All right. right. Well, there's a quote out there, you can't be what you can't see. I remember watching Diane Sawyer on Good Morning America and thinking, I want to be Diane Sawyer. And I got my Diane Sawyer moment for about 2.5 years, so yay me. But, you know, how do you see yourself in this field? Or what made you stay when so many young women maybe get discouraged or decide, hey, I think I should leave, or I'm intimidated? So what made you decide to not only pursue this career, but stay in it?
I'll take this one because I think, similar to what Sarah had just described, my landing in manufacturing and in the operations setting wasn't planned, it wasn't intentional. Oftentimes I like to think of it as like this career path chose me. Staying after college because a job was available was really just what made sense to me. But in that time that I worked in that manufacturing setting, as summer help, I was directly on the floor, and I just grew an appreciation for the type of work that we were doing. And also, I mean, Pierce was a part of my family. My dad had worked there my entire life. So it was something that made sense to me and felt right. And for so many years, I didn't even think of it in the context of, I'm outnumbered here. I'm a female in a place where there aren't a lot of other women around me, because I was more connected to the work. And that was a thought that I actually kept distant because it felt more comfortable to not consider it or really think about it. So that just gravitation to just being around the work, and then as I progressed in my career and connected with more women in the field and growing relationships even amongst men, it just felt like the right place for me. And now I'm to that spot where I feel very strongly that when you can connect, if you have that fear, if you don't have that same experience, getting to work with other women in the field and understanding it for what it is and how you might connect to the work rather than being an only female, it makes a big difference.
Anyone else want to tackle that one?
I'm trying not to talk too much, so it's the whole like sit in the back row because you talk too much since kindergarten thing. So I do actually have the moment where I was continually rising, top talent programs which exist at least at Kimberly-Clark, and even at that moment through those promotions and top talent, I don't know that I really recognized that. I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or like I just never thought of like the chief information officer, which is typically, and now it's changing a bit with titling, but that's like the highest that you can go in the field, right? And I remember my boss at the time, and we were in Thailand. It's like as clear as bell. I want to meet you for breakfast, and what I thought was, oh my God, what happened? What did I do? Like it never occurred to me it was something good. Like I was working hard, things were going well, and he sat me down for breakfast, and he said, I just want to talk to you that if you're not a CIO in 5 years, you're not managing your career right. I just want to talk to you about you being a CIO. And it was the first moment that it ever occurred to me, like, what? And it wasn't 5 years, it was about probably 7 years after that I became a CIO. But I don't know that I would have even cast my net, or I always say I put on a shirt and realized the size fit, if he hadn't believed in me. So there was that moment for me.
And this is something we talked about actually in our Zoom call at one point in your life. Did you have someone who really encouraged you or was a mentor? And I know that we talked a lot about how as women, we need to be those encouragers and those mentors as well. Anything to branch off of that? Because that was a really great topic that we discussed in our practice round.
I can share a little bit my experience. So I started at the same company. I'm just graduated, and I started as an engineer, but after my third year, I see that I'm really passionate for manage people and work on the management side. So all my career, I work to continue growing, and it's really difficult because at that time, I don't have a woman to be the one that I'm going to follow, so it's all males at the leadership. And after about 15 years work at the same company, I was promoted for R&D director for Latin America, and I was the first woman to sit in an executive team. And I saw first the big responsibility to be there, but I'm really glad that I could influence and help younger engineers that start in the same way that I started on the past. And today I'm really glad to see more women sitting at the executive team, leadership, And also, when I look my team of 25 engineers, half of the team are women. So I'm really glad to see all this journey.
I love that. And that kind of ties in really well with our next question, unless someone wanted to piggyback off Priscilla. All right, well, my next question is kind of then, okay, so where you sit now, what education or what processes or what are you creating in your workplaces that the next generation of women can utilize so that they're not maybe dealing with some of the biases and challenges that you faced maybe early in your careers?
We were having a little discussion before the panel, and one of the comments was, you know, our daughters, right? I have a daughter, and I think I was raised similarly. I had a very strong mother and a very supportive father, and there was just never a question. Everything's open to you. You can do anything you want to do. And just being that supportive for anybody, right? No matter what career path they want to take. I've made comments many times. I've taken people around job sites, high schoolers, trying to decide if they want to go into engineering or construction. And my parting words have always been, you know, do what you love, right? And then it doesn't feel like work, right? And just being supportive of that person's goal and let them know everything's possible. I want my daughter, I've never once told her, well, that's just maybe not for you, right? Or, hey, if that interests you, like, give it a shot. Why not? You have your whole life to work. If you don't get it right the first time, do it, you know, try something different. But just being supportive of what everybody finds and loves, right? And I think that happened to me, and I'm hoping I'm doing that to my daughter or anybody that joins me on a job site. One of the last people I did tour on the job site, I was friends with her mother, and her father wanted her to join the operators, engineers. He was part of that, and I did my little spiel as we're walking back to the trailer about, well, as long as you're doing what you love, it's not a job, right? And she said, you know what I really love? Elementary education. And I'm like, oh boy, that probably wasn't the right speech, and her mom didn't call me to thank me after the tour, but I hope she finds her passion. So.
Well, we need those teachers, so yes,
Yep.
I hope she finds it too. Anyone else?
Well, I think as a leader, one of the key things is I think women, this is my personal observation through the years, is they're very vulnerable in their careers when they become mothers, especially young mothers. It is the time where I feel like we lose a lot of women, particularly in demanding fields where you don't, like a teaching position is very demanding, but you don't have to manage, okay, now what am I doing in the summer when my kids are home? It's a wonderful profession. But in technology, for example, you're kind of on 24/7. You know, you don't choose when your system goes down. It goes down on Christmas Day. It goes down at 3 in the morning. I mean, I can't tell you the nights sitting up all night and then having to get up and go to work. So I do think that as leaders, it's really important to encourage women who are having children to not make big career decisions in those first months, particularly after they have their children, because, you know, I think those are the times where women leave the workforce. I also think it's really important as a woman leader to talk about your experiences as if you had children. Clearly everybody has children, and that is a different topic. But I do think it's really important for that. And also, like what my boss did for me at the time is bring the art of the possible, talk to women and talk about where they could go in their career so that they open up their minds to the thought that you could be a director, you could be a senior leader in this profession. Just, you know, open your mind to it that you could do it. So I think when I worked at Kimberly-Clark, I think I was the mentor to every woman that had a baby, like in the globe. And I am not exaggerating because it is so important to talk to them through that, because, you know, at times that's when you get the worst possible feedback, and sometimes that feedback is from men. You know, you get things like, well, you're choosing to work. I mean, I got that. You know, we choose to raise our children ourselves and not have daycare raise them, said to me by my boss. I mean, I could list stories about well-intentioned people saying things that completely demoralize you as a woman leader. Well, you know, it's your choice to do this. Or why don't you wait till after you have the baby before you take that class? Or we'll talk about the promotion in 6 months. You know, so these are the kind of things as women leaders, don't do it. Encourage women who are pregnant, encourage women who have children, encourage women who don't, that they have a place at that top, you know, that it's not just for men.
And I think in engaging in activities like this isn't the most comfortable setting for me, but the more that I commit to telling my story and reaching out to other women, especially younger women, if it's not something that I'm doing directly in the workplace, if there's something that I can do in the community that helps strengthen those types of considerations. I myself didn't really think about my career on this path, like I had already mentioned. I was encouraged into it, and I had the fortunate experience of having good conversations with leaders about what I was capable of, and being encouraged to think about what I want in my future. When I always knew I wanted to continue to grow. I just didn't really know what that meant. So being open to opportunities like this and being able to speak up about what we've experienced and ways that we've found success. And then also doing that in the workplace and having those same conversations with women and men alike, I think is the best that we can do.
All right, well, that's a great point, because I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure for women, right? If we're too loud, if we're too bold, we're considered the B word. Or there's a lot of pressure maybe to be badass women out there, right? So how do we speak up? How do we encourage young women to also use their voices? Go ahead, Priscilla.
I can start with one personal example from my early stage of my career. So my first year at the company, I was responsible to approve new packaging to be produced, to be launched at the market. And I worked close with operators at the plants. And one of the products that I approved had quality issues, and the whole production was rejected from the quality area. And we had a meeting one day after with about 20 people. My first year, younger engineer, and the plant manager said, do you know the R&D manager sent his younger girls to approve, and this is what happened. And everybody just looked at me, and at that point, I'd like to share, because I believe we are responsible for our career, and we are the one responsible to speak up. It's not easy, but what I decided at that point was to stop in his office after the meeting and share with him. I'm the younger engineer. I approve it. What do you advise? What's your advice for the next time? And he got really surprised, and he tried to apologize, saying, do you know the operators know that we are young, so they want speed for the production, so he influenced you to approve. But for the next case, you can ask it for support from the quality area, or you can stop by and ask for my support. Do you know, after that, I realized that we don't need to be afraid. First, don't take as a personal, even completely look as a personal. Don't be afraid to speak up and ask for help. And do you know, this guy, he was promoted after years, and he was the one that promoted me to a manager. So all the time I try to share this with the younger engineers, because it's hard, because at the moment, we are not going to have people supporting us. So how you can build your strength to really speak up and make sure that you don't take as a personal. So this is my recommendation.
I have lots of thoughts on
Go
it.
ahead, Sarah. Yes,
This is really hard. This is really hard for me to know. But when I was in my 20s and I worked on an infrastructure team, I was a director and the only woman that, so literally there'd be 20 men in the room. And again, it then becomes male culture. I don't think it's intentional. That's why diversity is so important, right?
Yes.
Because when you have a mixed race, mixed gender, mixed sexual orientation, you create a different culture, and certain things are or not acceptable, right? For my story, what I learned is that I had to interrupt. Like, I could not get I called it getting my voice in the room. I could not get my voice in the room. And so I started using this model in my head, and for us that grew up with snow, There's this thing we used to call King of the Mountain. I don't know if you ever remember playing it as a kid, where you get to the top of the mountain and you push everybody off of the snow pile, right? And then they would tumble down. I mean, I don't know. And I was competitive, right? So I literally started visualizing that model, now not in a rude way, as I was playing King of the Mountain. And that culture at that time was that culture. So I would just, when I would work my way up that mountain, when I got there, I'm going to push you off because I'm going to speak if I had something to say. And the other thing I would say to women that I notice is women lilt with their voices. This is just a super practical observation, right? They're like, well, this might be a dumb suggestion, but don't do it. No. Secondly, don't put a question mark at the end of every sentence. You're smart and what you have to say matters. So say something like, I believe this, and you end on a period, not a question mark. I know it's a very simple observation, but I have found women, when they get their voice in the room, they almost are like asking permission, where you don't see that with confident, I'll call it confident women, or men in general. How many men do you say, this might be a dumb suggestion, but what do you think about if we would install this server? They say, I think we should install that at this time, at this place, you know. So those are some suggestions, and you have to be bold. My one girlfriend always say, get your big girl panties on and get in there. That's what she used to say to me, because sometimes you start to doubt yourself and then you leave and you feel a little rattled. But that's it, you know, just know you belong there and stop with the whole imposter syndrome. You belong in that room, and they're better for having your voice in that room. So that means you have to get your voice in the room. And if that means interrupting, and again, in some cultures you don't have to interrupt. I'm talking about office or company culture, and in some you do, and if you have to, you do it. So those are some of my practical suggestions for what I had to personally like work through myself. And sometimes, you know, you leave and you got like rings of sweat under your armpits, but nobody can see that. Wear black. Right? That's another practical observation.
The gloves are off. I love it.
I'd like to just kind of tack on to the team, right, and how everybody's different, right? And sometimes your perspective is needed, right? I've said in many meetings where we walk out and I'll say something to the tune of, well, so-and-so was uncomfortable with how that conversation went, and maybe we need to reapproach it or come at it differently. And some of the males in the room are like, what? I thought it went fine. You know? And sometimes it takes a different personality, or it takes a little softer side sometimes to maybe see or hear things differently, see a mannerism differently. And that just really reinforces the whole team dynamic, right? It's just having different people with different perspectives, different ears, you know, and I think that's always a great thing. And just kind of tack on to, you're a great member of the team and you bring different assets.
And similarly, I think this topic will resonate differently with every person because of personality types, right? Like what I'm inclined to say is be self-aware and know how you feel in that type of setting so that you can learn to understand how to address. How do you become the king of the hill? Maybe it isn't being able to interrupt, but there might be other ways in which you can adapt your strategy and how you communicate in those settings based on the type of person that you are. Because I'm a type A, so that lends well into that setting, but that doesn't mean that people who are not type A's won't be successful and can't find a way to make themselves heard. So it's just really a matter of being self-aware and being willing to have conversations. I've often spoken to my teams about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I'm sure everybody's heard that before, but that really kind of is what it comes down to. You have to be willing to challenge yourself in those settings and figure out how you can be effective.
And practice makes perfect, right? The more you put yourself in that position to succeed and to have a voice, the better you get at it, the more confident you get at it. So yeah, gloves are off, ladies. Let's get in that room, absolutely. Let's talk about some of the benefits or the opportunities, though, that you have gained from being a woman in your prospective career fields. What has worked for you, and when has being a woman really paid off?
For me, it's been, I think, somewhat inherently, women have a sensitive side or the ability to be a little bit more in tune with things that are happening in their surroundings. They're just more aware. And I think that that lends very well to relationship building. And I credit a lot of what I've done in my career to my ability to build relationships, particularly with men, because that's largely the population that I'm working with. So being able to build relationships and establish, I'll call it mentors, but it doesn't have, I think mentor can be a scary word for a lot of people who are intimidated by the concept, right? But having relationships with people and being able to gain that mentorship and have somebody to talk through the challenging situations that you're going through with is really what gets you there.
We discussed a little bit about the importance of different perspective and different point of view, and I believe the women bring this, such as being a mom. I use diaper bags and baby wipes, packaging, and it's helped me to bring my view as a consumer for the development discussion. So don't be afraid to really bring your experience, your personal experience, and you'll see there are different point of views to support the team.
I think for me, too, I would say being a woman in technology, I mean, really technology is a tool, right? And I think to your point about perspectives, one of my favorite Kimberly Clark stories, and it's a little bit of an old one, and because I was a director at the time, and my CIO was a woman. And this has since changed at Kimberly Clark, but at the time, Kimberly Clark makes feminine care products. And so they had your Europe, Middle East, Africa leader, North American leader, Latin American operations leader, and one more. And I know what it is, but I can't think of it. And I'm sitting next to my CIO, who's a woman, and she observed to me that all 4 of them were men leading feminine care products. Now, they're very qualified people, and they were very knowledgeable, so I'm not taking it away, but I think that idea of what a woman can bring to it was, to me, personified by that example. She leans over to me, and she said, "I wonder how those guys felt when they got their first period." And to me, I thought that's example of what being a woman in a field can bring, is that, and I think it's true of gender, it's true of race, it's true of sexual orientation. I think just so happens today we're talking as a women's panel. When you bring different perspectives, you're better as a company. You're better decision making. I mean, for example, the reason why you can pull up to a gas station and pay at the pump was a woman engineer who said, "Oh my gosh, I have a 2-year-old in my car seat. I have to choose between, leaving the 2-year-old and running in to pay." It was British Petroleum. That's my phone. I'm so sorry. I thought I turned it off. Or I have to, take them out of the car seat for 30 seconds. And so that was an example to me of where women bring a perspective that is unique. I'm going to go turn that off.
It never stops for us, ladies. Never stops. So let's talk about how we are able to get women into these non-traditional career fields, all right? So how do we recruit, and not only recruit, how do we retain women in these fields? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
I think, just the support, right? And letting them, I've said this seems like forever, but letting everybody know that it's a possibility, right? And then being supportive. There's different things. I have an example. My first engineering class at Madison, I sat down, I came into class, I was early, so there was nobody else in the room. I needed to find my room, I needed to be ready. And I sat down and had my stuff all sitting out, and I was the first person in the room. And a gentleman comes in, another student, and he sat right next to me. And he leaned over, and the whole room is empty, but you had to sit right here. And he leans over and he says, "This is an engineering class. I think you're in the wrong building." And I looked at it, and I thought to myself, I could have handled that 2 different ways, right? I could have stormed out and let that be defining the way I define my engineering career, right? Or be like, "Hey, no, I'm here. I earned my spot just like you." And actually, we graduated together, and we ended up being friends. So just knowing that, there are stories like that, right? And things are going to happen. I'm not going to lie. Somebody's going to make a comment that isn't, and it's how you handle it and who you can call maybe for support. I went back to my apartment at the time, and I called my mom and my dad that night, and they're like, man, he was pretty, yeah, that was so wrong, right? And I'm like, yeah, that, who would even say that? I wonder where he was right. You know, and just that type of thing of just not, you sometimes have to let things roll off you and be okay with that, and then have support team and be there for people that, hey, things are going to happen. You can always call me. You can always, you know, and making sure you lay out those avenues for people to reach out.
In my view, talk about retain, I believe when you feel being part of something, the feeling of belong, you are going to stay at the company. And in my experience at Anchor, just as example, we have a program of diversity that we call Women Impacting Now. And since I was in Brazil, I was part of this program, and it support me in some situation. I know that support others. And I have an interesting experience that when I share this program with one customer that's a global company down in Brazil, the quality director, that was a woman, she said, no, we need to start this kind of program here. So answer the question, I believe the companies need to continue have formal actions to build a better environment, to bring diversity and inclusion. So, and what I'd like to share is with this example of my customer is, if your company are not doing, you can be the one to raise your rent and try to start something to help the others that's coming.
All right, let's get some advice tossed out here. So what is your biggest piece of advice for women going into a non-traditional field?
I think for those just getting into the field initially, it's really important to find your allies. Like, if you're concerned about the fact that you are in a female in a role in which there are not a lot of other women around you, it's not as though all men think that you don't belong there. I think that that's quite contrary to the truth, actually. But when you build those relationships and you find out that there are people there that can understand those challenges that you might be up against, and build connections with them, I think it creates that bond, and it gives you that ear to talk through those types of situations that might feel not right because of that being in that setting. And then I've personally experienced, when I've experienced something that wasn't right, I had a counterpart to help address those types of situations. So if it truly is uncomfortable and you have allies, it can bring a lot of confidence because you know that somebody's got your back, and even so, somebody that can help address when something is off, when something is wrong.
I'd say find your voice, right? Find your voice. Find what it needs to make yourself comfortable. If that's, I guess I'll piggyback. 99.9% of the people you encounter want you to succeed, right? So ask the questions. Be inquisitive, right? Don't be embarrassed. Don't, and as you become more confident, you find your voice. And I think just doing what you can to find support mechanisms to do that. And then from there, I think as you find your voice and you become more confident, you become depended on, right? So don't be the mouse, right? Don't just ask, hey, why is it like that? And in my career, I've had electricians, plumbers, I don't understand how that works. Can you show me? And they're so proud of what they do every day, and they're willing to show you, tell you anything they can do, right? And just the more knowledge you can absorb by asking questions and being inquisitive, I think is some advice I would give to somebody.
Just to complement is find your voice, and we know that's a journey, and my advice will be don't be afraid and don't take as a personal, because you are going to listen. I know that now it's less than on the past, but don't take as a personal, try to solve, ask for help, ask for support is the best advice.
I have a couple. One is, I think through your career, you've been told to accept feedback. The feedback is a gift. I always joke, about that in my home. Yeah, thank you for that gift. But not all feedback is a gift, right? I mean, I think sometimes you have to, if you listen to all the feedback that you got through your career, you'd be a chameleon. So you need to be that core of your authentic self. So there's no success if you're faking it. I always say like Eleanor Rigby, putting the mask on. So you need to be your authentic self. One piece of advice I got, which I'll never forget, which I chose not to accept, and it was my boss. He said, Sarah, because his idea of how an executive acted was how male executives acted. That was the role model. And again, I was in my 30s, so this is quite a few years ago. And he said, that Sarah dial, turn it down. That was a quote. And of course, I tried because I was young, and I remember talking to my mom about it. That's just terrible advice, that's terrible. But, I tried then to act like everyone else. And, I found that was exhausting. So again, listen to advice, listen to feedback, but don't let that be something that changes you from your authentic self. Because if you have to fake it every day, then maybe you're not in the right profession. Maybe it's not the right for you. So that would be the first thing. And sometimes I think women in particular are their own worst enemy. And I'm not blaming women. I'm blaming the voices in my head that tell me, hey, look at what they did. They're better than you. You have to work harder. You can't do this if you're a mom, because as a mom, for example, you never feel like you do anything good enough. Like if I work really, really hard at work, well, then I'm not working hard enough at home. So, you have to, I always say, take that committee that's inside your head and fire them. Get a brand new committee that tells you you can do it, right? And I think those are some of the things that sometimes you yourself limit yourself, because you start thinking to you, well, I don't know if I can do that. I don't have a stay-at-home husband who takes care of everything for me. I don't have the world telling me that if you work hard at work and if you're at work a lot, then you're probably not a good mom. And if your kids get in trouble at school as well, it's because mom's working. I heard all that stuff. I also heard a lot of really, really positive things too. So sometimes just take a deep breath, have girlfriends. That's super, for me, that was a critical, maybe that's what you talked about, the mentorship, or those people that you go to and you get to say all the dumb things that you're thinking about all this stuff and have them tell you, yeah, no, that's not it. So for me, one of the critical things in my career was having those, I'll call girlfriends, that you could be really, really just unleash all the stuff inside you, but that you wouldn't want to say at work. Don't do that at work. Do it with your girlfriends, with your family, because I see people doing that. So those are some thoughts that I had, since I can be reflective after many, many years.
Never underestimate the power of a good vent sesh and a bottle of wine.
Yes.
I think
That's right.
just granting yourself.
And it's got to be in a lockbox. In a lockbox.
I even think like granting yourself grace, right? Give yourself some grace.
That's a good one.
It's one of those things that it's taken some time in my career to get to that, and I think if I would have learned it earlier, things would have just felt better, right? But just give yourself grace. Nobody's perfect, even if they pretend to be, right? So give yourself some grace. Just take a deep breath, bite the elephant off one piece at a time, and give yourself some time to reflect and breathe.
Yeah, not every day is a good day.
I think we could be here for another hour, maybe 2 or 3. Let's give our panel, please, a big round of applause. Hopefully you've left with a little or a big chunk of wisdom here today, and that's kind of what this day is all about, inspiring one another. Thank you again for being here, and with that, we will let you mingle amongst yourselves, head upstairs for our luncheon to begin, and thank you all so much for being here today.
When does the luncheon begin? Do you know? No. Right now? You got to head up there?